All right, let's go over the main points of today's lesson. So, what are the main points of today's lesson? First, what is the difference between a phrase and a clause? What are the 5 kinds of clauses in English? What are SVO clauses? What is and is not a part of a verb phrase? What are compound subjects, verbs, and objects? What are SV clauses? What are stop signs for SV clauses? Now let's go over part 1, subjects, verbs, and objects. First, let's review the parts of the English language. English starts with letters. There are 26 letters in English. They're divided into vowels and consonants. Then you have syllables and words. Words are the basic building blocks of language communication. Today, beautiful automobile modernization, these are all words. But long words can be divided into syllables. For example, today, 2 syllables. Modernization has 5 syllables. Then groups of words are called phrases, like the delicious food in front of me, have been filling out. Or a group of words can be a clause. There are 5 kinds of clauses. You see here SV all the way to SVOC. And then all of this together, words, phrases, and clauses, equals a sentence. A sentence is everything from the first word to the period or question mark at the end. I went through this quite quickly because now we'll talk about each one of these more specifically. Now let's talk about each part a little more specifically. So every clause has a main verb. Every sentence has a main verb. The main verb sometimes comes after a helping verb. The helping verb main verb combination is called the verb phrase. The verb phrase does not include the word not or other adverbs. It's only the helping verb and the main verb. So Elliot can speak 5 languages. The verb phrase is can speak. We probably will not have time to watch a movie this Friday. The verb phrase is will have, and not is not a part of it. Should I call you after work tomorrow? The verb phrase is should call. Every sentence must have at least one clause. Every clause must have at least one main verb. Main verbs are controlled by time. This is called verb tense. Every morning I walk my son to the bus stop. This morning I walked my son to the bus stop. Right now, Kayla is walking her brother to the bus stop. The form of walk changes when the time changes. The number of clauses in a sentence is equal to the number of main verbs in the sentence. These sentences each have 3 main verbs, so each has 3 clauses. So I wanted to hang out with my friends, but I caught a cold, so I stayed home. 3 verbs, 3 clauses. Yuko is very angry at her husband because he forgot that yesterday was their anniversary. Every day, Skylar takes a shower, gets dressed, and eats breakfast by 6:30. Again, all of these 3 verbs, 3 clauses. So what are subjects and objects? The subject is the noun or pronoun that tells you who or what does the action. The subject almost always comes before the main verb. And in English, the subject is almost always written or spoken. In many languages, you don't have to say or write the subject. In English, you do. The object is the noun or pronoun that tells you who or what receives the action. If there is an object, it always comes immediately after the main verb. Right after. If there's anything else, then there's no object. This is a general rule. Of course, there will be some exceptions. The subject and object do not include adjectives and other words connected to the noun. For example, my parents have 2 dogs. Parents is the subject. My is not a part of it. And dogs is the object. 2 is not included. Next Friday, everyone will receive their winter bonus. Subject, everyone. Object, bonus. Their winter, nope, not a part of it. Chris shouldn't have quit his job so suddenly. Again, his is not a part of the object. Now, one kind of clause, called an imperative statement, does not need a written or spoken subject. Imperative statements are used to give directions or orders. The subject you is understood. For example, close your books and put them away. Who will do this? The listener, you. Turn left at the next stoplight, you. Now, what are compound subjects and objects? A compound subject is when the subject of the main verb has 2 nouns or 2 pronouns, or 1 noun and 1 pronoun, that are connected by and or. For example, New England and Dallas have both won 5 Super Bowls. New England and Dallas together is a compound subject. Australia and New Zealand have similar flags. Again, 2 countries, Australia and New Zealand, make 1 compound subject. A compound object is when the object of the main verb has 2 nouns or pronouns that are again connected by and or. At the wedding, they will serve chicken, beef, and for vegetarians, pasta. This object has 3 parts. It is a 3-part compound object, even though and for vegetarians is in the middle. Americans celebrate Independence Day in July and Thanksgiving in November. Notice that you have stuff in the middle. That's okay. But together, Independence Day and Thanksgiving is the compound object. Compound subjects and objects do not affect the number of clauses in a sentence, the way I count them. The above sentences all have just 1 clause because they all have just 1 main verb. So let's look more specifically, subjects, verbs, and objects. All right, compound verbs. What happens with these? A compound verb is when there are 2 main verbs connected by and or, and the 2 verbs share the same subject, which is written only once. Because there are 2 main verbs, a compound verb is counted as 2 clauses. My parents bought a new car and gave their old one to me. Both bought and gave share the subject parents. We lost the first 2 games, but then won the next 7 games. Okay, so again, we have kind of a difficult compound verb. compound verb can also share helping verbs and objects. Shared helping verbs go before the first main verb. Shared objects go after the second main verb. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on here. I can speak and understand Japanese fluently, but can't read or write kanji. So what's happening? Well, we have 4 main verbs: speak, understand, read, and write. The first 2 verbs share the helping verb can. The second pair of verbs share the helping verb can and not. All 4 verbs share the subject I. Speak and understand share the subject Japanese. Kanji is the shared object of read or write. So this can get crazy, all right? Follow along if you can. So speak and understand, but read or write. These 4 verbs are all connected, and, but, or. Then you've got can connected to both speak and understand. Can, can't is connected to read and write. I is connected to all 4 subjects. Speak and understand share the object Japanese. Read and write share the object kanji. It's quite complex, but in the end, you just have 4 clauses. I can speak Japanese. I can understand Japanese. I can read or cannot read kanji. I can write kanji, cannot write kanji. I put not in parentheses because for the online exercises, don't include not. And that's it for part 1. Do some practice exercises, and I'll see you in part 2. Now let's go over the main points of part 2. SV and SVO clauses. First, we have to talk about 2 kinds of verbs, transitive and intransitive. So what is a transitive verb? A transitive verb must be followed by an object, always 100%. For example, we watched a movie. We watched it. However, you can't say we watched yesterday because watched must have an object. It's a transitive verb. An intransitive verb cannot be followed by an object. Any noun that comes after an intransitive verb must be connected by a preposition. For example, everyone went to the cafeteria. No, because went or go is an intransitive verb. You have to say everyone went to the cafeteria. Now, some verbs can be both transitive and intransitive. That means the verb can be followed by an object, but doesn't have to have an object. For example, I ate a sandwich for lunch. I ate in the cafeteria. Eat is both transitive and intransitive. It can have an object or not. It depends on the situation. Now, what are SV and SVO clauses? An SVO clause is a clause with a transitive verb followed by an object. An SV clause is a clause with an intransitive verb without an object. The main verb in an SV clause is often followed by a preposition. However, watch out for phrasal verbs. So, the first example is an SV clause with a preposition. The little girl counted on her fingers. But in this case, parents count on teachers to educate their children. Count on is a phrasal verb, so it is an SVO clause. Now, in this example, Joey came down with his friends instead of driving himself. Came is an intransitive verb. Down is an adverb that answers the question where. Where did Joey come? But in this example, Joey came down with a cold, so he didn't go to school. Came down with is a phrasal verb, and cold is an object. So please stop and think sometimes, is it a phrasal verb? Is it not? And that's it for today's lesson. Go on and do the final exercises, and I'll see you in another lesson soon. Aloha.